Okay, so I have a prophecy pulled up. There's several of them. I did not have time before I got on today, but we can see now. I don't know this whole entire story that's going on with the whole Pete Hegseth and the whole them getting in and leaking some of that information. But God said right before President Trump, this was right after the election, but he's been saying even before the election, he said it after the election, he's been saying it since the election. The enemies were trying to do everything to sabotage him in every way, shape, or form. I'm going to give you a very powerful word that I gave out this morning about President Trump still having wolves in sheep's clothing in his midst. He still has moles in his midst. But this one was from, let's see here. It was like November 10th is when I heard it. I gave it out November 12th. This is called, there's still a war going on for this nation. My children, whistleblowers are coming forward to prove your enemies don't want peace. They don't want a smooth transition. They are not good at losing. So they're not let these optics fool you. They are plotting and planning behind closed doors about all the options they have for staying in power. But let me remind you, they still have spies collecting data from President Trump so they can sabotage him in any way he tries moving forward. And so as we're seeing right now with this leak that again, I don't know what's actually going on because I don't watch the news. I don't know what's exactly happened. I've been filled in a little bit with the team that there has been some leaks by some journalists from like the Atlantic or something. I don't know exactly what it was.
Yep.
But this is all a type of sabotage to bring more dysfunction, to bring more delays, to bring more distraction. They're trying to do everything to make it harder, to bring lies to the surface, whistleblowers. They're trying to bring judges to the surface, trying to do all these different things to stop President Trump because he's right over the target. So they're trying to keep him busy. And they're trying to keep him dealing with other things and not just dealing with the things at hand that he needs to deal with, is taking out the deep state. So they're trying every level and every way they can to slow him down. And this is just another tactic of what they're doing, is causing disinformation, and they're causing things to be a distraction from what is really going on and the truth that's really coming out.
Yeah, it's they're still talking about it on the fake news right now. It's taken over the news. There's no question this was a setup. I knew right when it happened that it was a setup. The question is, who set up who? What I believe right now is the deep state tried to set up President Trump because this was orchestrated perfectly at the timing of that hearing yesterday. Because all these senators were ready for this. They just attacked. This is a way, try to a Russia hoax 2.0. However, I believe President Trump set them up, counter move back, because this is exposing somebody within his cabinet that is not doing good. Mm-hmm. And I went into prayer about that last night to the Lord. And I'm not going to say the name yet. I'll let it expose, but it's one of the people on the thread. And the Lord says, no good. He's up to no good. So. Mm-hmm. That's a bad one. This Goldberg, who is the reporter from the Atlantic hates President Trump. There's no way. I've used Signal chats communicating with generals. As a matter of fact, the general just connected with me before we came on Signal. There's no way you accidentally put somebody in there. It was a setup, whether it was the CIA setting them up or a member of Trump's team. It wasn't an accident. But this Goldberg is the same guy that did the Iraq lies. He did the Russia hoax, and he's the one that went with this ridiculous lie where President Trump called the military losers. So he was the instigator behind all that. So of all people that you leak something to, it's the worst of the worst to take it. And this is this Goldberg. And now this Goldberg is in a situation because he was called out yesterday by one of the people that are friendly to him saying, well, if you have top secret information and these were war plans, aren't you going to show people what it is? And he won't show people what it is.
Exactly. So one of the things that God also said is while they're trying to sabotage or set up President Trump in any way, he's setting up traps for them. And he's also said that President Trump is playing chess when the enemy is on the board of playing checkers. They're not on the same playing field. So just when they think they're going to set him up, just when they think they're going to bring him down, just when they think they're going to bring like a collapse to his administration, get into the point where he is so distracted and cause all these different issues, it's actually setting them up, like you said, for failure. And it's setting them up to show them exactly who it is. God's been talking with us for a long time of how when the enemies are trying to do what they're trying to do to Trump and what they're trying to expose Trump for is they're actually exposing themselves. And just like we talked about last week with the pardons, and I think the week before that, Well, they set up themselves because they set it up for the exact timeline. So they didn't have to sit there and check every single timeline and go back all these different years. They were giving themselves away, just like they're giving themselves away that he has a leak, just like they were giving themselves away that there was a leak inside DHS when they were doing all these raids on the illegal immigrants. And all of a sudden, somehow, some way, these people were given a heads up right before it happened, and then they took off. So it's showing that there's weak links, and it's going to show a mole, and it's going to show these wolves in sheep's clothing. And just when they think they have President Trump exactly what they want him, they're going to be exactly where President Trump and God want them.
So it's fascinating. I think I brought this up maybe a year or two ago. I have communications with Israeli generals, American generals, Canadian generals, Australian generals, and each general prefers a certain platform. Like Israel, WhatsApp. You cannot communicate to the generals in Israel anything other than WhatsApp. Why? Because Israel built the app. They can key into it to see what people are talking. Signal was built by the CIA. I believe John Ratcliffe yesterday was doing that as a setup because the CIA can go into any Signal chat and read exactly what those conversations are. I believe that was another trap that President Trump has, and he's working with Elon to come up with a more secure system that nobody can, like a SCIF inside a phone that you cannot communicate. Maybe that's the origins of the X phone. But interesting enough, I think there was a senator set up yesterday too. I'm not going to name the senator's name. I'll let this just play out. But this is just a coincidence. As the rabbis say, coincidence is not a kosher word. I'm flying back from Israel. And just so happens we fly and get back into, I don't remember, we flew into New York from Tel Aviv. And it's like 4 o'clock in the morning because we took a red eye. And here's a senator getting off the plane with me in the night. And nobody knew he was in Israel at the time. He looks at me and I look at him. I recognize who he was. He must have recognized me because he looked like he saw a ghost. And it was really, really weird. And I kind of went up to him. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, "Thank you, Senator, for all you're doing." And I just felt this uneasy feeling that something was not right there. It's the same senator that was in yesterday's hearing. I think he might be being called out as well.
Well, I want to read something because this is going along with what you're talking about. This is the prophecy that I actually gave out this morning that talked about wolves in the White House. There are wolves in the White House. And this is one of the things that the Lord said. My children continue to pray for my David in the seat of the president. Not just for his protection, that he has my influence and wisdom and not one of just man. There are deceivers in his midst politically and spiritually. There are many who are trying to sabotage everything your president and his efforts to destroy and expose the establishment. There are time wasters delaying the dark secrets and systems of the deep state from coming out to stop the collapse of the swan. Some people in the governmental and spiritual positions are just out for themselves. They're too busy to fight the enemy from within so they can climb the ladder in Washington. Then he says, President Trump has traitors in his midst, and they need to be removed because instead of hearing from me, they are trying to drown out my voice and the real reason he is still alive today, and why I protected him from those bullets, and why I chose him to fight for this nation. Some of his advisors are wolves in sheep's clothing. Pray blinders are removed and these wolves evicted from the White House and out of their governmental positions. There are moles in the White House. People that the deep state recruited years ago to look like they're on the side of the red when they really are blue. Deep blue state traitors, or deep state blue traitors, giving important security secrets and leaking crucial information in important conversations and strategies of the Trump administration and giving it to those who are desperately trying to stop the demolition of the establishment. Those moles will be unmasked in front of the nation. As treasonous traitors to their own country, it will bring shock and awe to the United States and the world who they really are. Then he says, the enemies of this great nation are not letting this nation go without a fight. I need my church to wake up and get up and shake those shackles off. The enemies are trying to keep you in war for prayer for this nation. So before I go on, he has mentioned before in many different prophecies that there are moles. He's mentioned before that there are traitors. He's mentioned before that there are spies. And this is something that we have to be aware of, that this is a spiritual battle. President Trump can do so much politically and he can do so much naturally, but he's fighting a spiritual fight. And that's when the church comes in. The church has to stand up in war for these people to be unmasked, and that there is a discernment, and that President Trump hears from God, and his voice is not being drowned out by some of these people trying to cause distraction, and they're deceiving him in order to destroy him. So he needs to hear more from God than just advisors. But seeing all these things, again, President Trump is really sly about certain things. He's very, very, very smart. He's setting people up, like you said before. He probably thinks that a person might be one way and they could be that way. So he's going to put them in a position whether they're going to fall for it and whether they're not going to fall for it. Because he knows if he has any question, he's going to make sure he puts them in a position where he's going to know for sure what side they're on.
That's exactly right. So your prophetic word about unmasked before the war was unmasked publicly. Is that what it said?
Yep, in front of the nation and the world, yes.
That happened yesterday. And I think that was just the start of what's going to happen, because the people involved were on TV yesterday that I've been told, and the church. You mentioned the church. I got to be careful how I say this, because I don't want it to go back to so people figure out who told me this. But a certain person that is a spiritual advisor to President Trump, you and I both know, is not good. That is definitely, she came out yesterday with something about prosperity gospel. If you sow $1,000 in by Easter, you're going to get whatever. It was horrible. But that more intel came behind the scenes about her from generals and spiritual people the last few days. This is bad. And they tried to cover it up a little bit by bringing some pastors in to try to balance that team out a little bit. And I'm told they're not allowing these people in at all. So she's completely controlling this atmosphere, and it's not good. It's toxic. So President Trump needs to realize that quickly. Got a bad Oreo among them.
Yep. And he's prophesied that before, because me and you have already talked about this, because there's prophecies. But I'm going to go on, because there's also what he talks about is there are people spiritually, and he's mentioned it earlier, but there's a continuation of this. He says, a collapse is coming, a collapse of the deep state, but my church, you have a part on the front lines of this war. To speak the words I give you, to continue to shout your enemies out until you see them all fall. I told you this nation would not be saved by an election. A political reset must take place to rid this nation of treasonous traitors, snakes, jackals, murderers, thieves that are still under the radar, trying to control this nation. President Trump needs my church more than he realizes, now more than ever. Not just well-known pastors or faith leaders. He needs the ones that I have chosen by his side that are not all there yet. So my children, there is a work still to be done to evict your enemies from your government. Call them down without stopping and call them for their complete exposure. Your president can't fight this spiritual battle without you, my church, using the authority that I have given to you. No longer let the enemy silence your voice. So the reason why he was talking about that, again, he was reiterating this because he was talking back about a month ago how the church was fighting really hard before the election. And then after the election, and of course, after the inauguration, knowing that safety of President Trump, he got the inauguration, now he's in presidency, they started to back off. And God is saying no, because there are spiritual advisors there that are, like you said, keeping the right ones away. Mm-hmm. You have political people that are keeping the right ones away. It's like inner circle and an inner circle. And so they have like these protection around him that he only hears what they want him to hear, whether it's spiritually or whether it's politically. God's been talking to us for a very long time. And like you mentioned before, that person, I have not had the greatest feeling in the world. I don't know this person personally, but I go by my inside of my spirit. Whenever I see this person on television, I just get a knot in my gut. And I just have that discernment of something is seriously, seriously wrong. And that person, like you said, is also keeping the real truth and the real people that God needs around him. they're keeping that away from him on purpose.
Yeah, so I'm told, too, that President Trump has the right names, the people that truly he can trust, and it's being held back. When he's going to bring them in, I don't know. I could see probably a fall of the current ones, and then the ones that he can really trust will come in. What he knows, I don't know. This is not that I'm always pro-Trump. Trump is 5D chess, and he's always smart. I have concerns about President Trump. Some of the things I hear behind the scenes with transhumanism and AI, how he's going all in, that's got me concerned big time. So, but until I had I have a conversation with him to see what he thinks, I don't know.
Yeah, and with the spiritual, the faith leaders and the spiritual advisors, whatever you want to call it, God said that there would be a complete transformation. Like he was literally going to gut it out and start it all over again. But again, it has to be God doing it. This is like we're at right now where, President Trump is setting up people politically. God has also put people in there spiritually, or allowed people to get in there spiritually for their fall. People don't fall behind the curtain.
Right.
People fall in front of the curtain because you have to know what's really going on. Like you said, with President Trump and certain things that he's being told and things that he believes, that's because those voices are not the voices that God is saying and speaking through to get the real truth to him. That's why his voice is being drawn out with all this AI junk, with all these other things that are going on, to make it look like this is the real answer when God is saying, no, my way is the way. I am the way, I'm the truth, and I am the life. You don't have somebody there that's willing to boldly stand up and say, this is what God's saying, whether they feel comfortable about it or not. Because too many times people say what he wants to hear or what anybody wants to hear, but you need to say what needs to be said by Almighty God in a very, very bold way, which I'm sure that's probably not very easy because I'm sure he's intimidating. But by the power and the boldness of Almighty God, it can get done. He has to know, and again, what's in this prophetic word? He has to know exactly why he was saved and why God has him in leadership in this nation. And it's not just politically, this is also a spiritual movement, because you can't save this nation without it being saved spiritually first. So this is the reason why it can't just be a political thing and a military thing. It has to be a spiritual thing, because this is a war of good versus evil. But I'm telling you, the one person that is driving this force to drown out God, I've been praying about this person because he's doing a lot of good things, but there's also a lot of bad things, and he's leading them in a path of turning away from God instead of turning to him.
That's right. So this is what I would suggest to President Trump and his team, if they're watching, or if you get it to President Trump. This will separate the wheat from the tare on your spiritual. Bring in the spiritual team, and don't tell anybody who's on the team. Meet with them in private. Make sure there's no cameras. Nobody knows what's going on. Let it just be God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, because the other people that are coming in, they want the camera, they want the glory, they want the limelight. But if it's done in private, nobody knows about it, it's truly of God.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what God was saying before, just like in this prophecy. They're in it for themselves and to climb the ladder in D.C. It's not for the fact that they want to say what God is saying. They got there, and some of them, I'm not saying all of them are bad. And we know people. I just know one person. He's a good man. And I really love and respect him very much. He's a good man of God. He's a powerful man of God. And so I respect him totally. I'm talking about other people. There are good ones and there are bad ones. Not everybody's bad, but not everybody's good. And so again, there has to be what God called it, a spiritual restructuring. But God, again, is going to let them do what they think they're going to get away with, and it's going to set them up for their fall. And it has to be very soon, because again, we're in this transition of our country of political power and spiritual power, but it has to be God's words and God's directives. And like you said, there are people out there that I know in ministry that I promise you that would go into the White House and would not tell a single soul where they were going, just to do what they need to do and walk out.
Yep.
And not get any credit for it and not have a pat on the back, and they wouldn't care. There are people out there that don't care about status. They care about the assignment from God.
That's right.
That's what this is. It's an assignment from God. President Trump needs to know what his assignment is. It's not just the fact that I know he gives God praise. I've seen him and I've heard him and I've teared up and I've cried when he said it, that he knows that God saved him for a reason. The problem is he hasn't been told why God calls him as David, why it's so important, not only that he is God's David, but why it's so important to know the knowledge that David had and the revelation of David had about fighting an enemy. And it wasn't his intelligence and it wasn't his strength and it wasn't his position. It was God with him and doing it through him. And that's what President Trump truly needs to hear from the people around him. And if there are people that are around him that are listening to this needs to get to him. He needs to hear the direction from God, because God's words are being drowned out by political things and by all these different sabotaging things and leakers and all these different problems and all these different things that are getting his attention off of what God is saying, instead of getting attention on God, what is God saying? Because what God is saying is going to solve everything else.
Yep. He needs a Nathan that will come up to him in private with nobody else around, not for fame and fortune, just because God called him to do what he's supposed to do, and tell him what he needs to hear from God. And if Nathan's life was in jeopardy, Nathan's life in jeopardy. You don't go up to the king and say, the king, you're that sheep. That's what he needs to hear when he needs to hear it. Not many people like to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's coming to that point. It's coming to that point, and whoever he has, I don't think, again, it's not anybody that's there. I think it's going to be somebody different. I think he's got, because he said, there's not everybody that I've called to be by his side is by his side right now. Because like what he said earlier in another prophecy, people are keeping them out.
Right. Yep.
Because what the Lord said, Judases.
Yep.
There's Judases in his camp. And those Judases are the ones that are keeping the real ones out.
I know two around him that are men of God, have a great heart, and I believe truly in private they would tell him what he needs to hear. I believe, but they're not. They're getting pushed out, even though they're part of the group. They're not part of the group. She's locking them down. It's just placating,
right? Because that's the control.
Yep.
And where there's that control, then you're not letting God do it. Because one of the things that I've had people try to do this with my ministry as well, and they're not with me anymore. Because any single time that a person has their own agenda and their own idea, if it is not from God, no. God is the head of this ministry, just like he's the head of yours. He's the head of he should be number one.
Yep.
But a lot of people make it about themselves and make it about, well, this is a really good idea. Well, if it's not God ideas, you throw it out.
Yep.
So there are Judases. And Satan has done this for so long. That's the reason why there's a lot of these pastors, a lot of these ministries, a lot of these mega churches, and a lot of these people of heads of these ministries have been compromised because they've had these Judases in there trying to control everything and trying to deceive these people into doing something away from God instead of doing something toward God. And that's what's happening all the way up to the White House. And that's the reason why we as the body of Christ really have to be praying and interceding right now, because we're at a very, very pivotal moment. And the words of God have to be said at the exact right time and the exact right day. And they cannot be stopped. And everything that's blocking it, we have to call it down like the walls of Jericho.
Well, yeah, if you're over the target, like you said in your ministry, you have Judases in your ring. We've had several Judases in our ring trying to do things for their own glory, their own purpose. I would say not backstabbing, but stabbing in the front. That's the worst, right in the front. And I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, where's my wisdom and discernment to stop that from happening? And he, in a very calm way, he says, you know what, my son, those people that came into the ministry had an opportunity. A door was open for them. And they chose not to walk through that door. They chose to do it for themselves. So it's not that you didn't have wisdom and discernment. It's I gave them a choice and a chance with free will, and they decided to take it upon themselves. Then I made you aware of it, even though it's very painful.
That's a confirmation from what the Lord exactly what showed me, because I beat myself up pretty hard about it.
Yeah.
She's like, how did I miss that? And he said, no, they had a choice and they made the wrong one. And I think just like right now, there's some of these people that are by him. I don't believe, again, I know there's some of them that are very good people. Like you said, at least two of them that are good people for sure. But there are people that were put in that position that were good at first, that were doing the right thing for God. But again, fame and money And certain things politically can really change people from doing what God wants you to do. And then all of a sudden you're going, well, what's the most popular thing to do? And what's going to get me ahead most in life? Those are the things that really what deceives people. And that's why, with us in this team, like we always say, we never go anywhere God doesn't tell us to go. We don't do anything God doesn't tell us to do. And we always had a confirmation with each other that we always have God's first and foremost, his will. And it's never anybody else's. It's only God's will, and God's will will be done, period. And that's how, again, have we made mistakes? Everybody's made a mistake. People make mistakes. And when you fall down, you get back up again. The thing is, we all have to be directed by God. This is not a time where we can do things what we think is right. We have to do things that we know is right because it's coming directly from God.
Yeah, and sometimes you grow up and you go through the cemetery. I call it seminary, and you don't know, and you're not used to that fame and the fortune that comes with blowing up. It's temptation. One thing that I'm very blessed about, I didn't come through the normal. I came from the corporate world, so I came into the ministry as a millionaire. And gave it all back to start his glory. And I'm obviously not a millionaire now, but I was around celebrities. So to me, that was not a big deal. And so that helped me transition that when I'm around somebody important, they put their pants on the way we do. The only one that's truly important is him. It's his glory, not our glory.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly what we need to do. And like some people think, well, you just came out of nowhere. Well, I was preaching for 10 years and nobody knew about it. I was preaching to a church of like 10 to 15 to 20 people. And if God can trust you in the small, God can trust you in the big. That's and exactly so when people didn't see all the struggles, they didn't see what was going on. All of a sudden they saw, well, you were not there, and all of a sudden you're there, and you have ministry you have, and it's like, no, God did it. I'm nobody special. God did it. He's the one who brings the increase. He's the one who brings the people. And so if we keep that attitude, if we keep that mindset that we are nothing without God, because we're not. Because if we didn't realize that, we could have all this stuff and all of a sudden one day it's gone.
Yep.
Because you turned away from God. And that's what's going to happen to a lot of these people. There's prophecies that I think people got confused with because God was giving some of these people a chance. He was saying this can happen. And then all of a sudden you hear a different transition when he talks about him again. They made the wrong choice. They took the wrong steps. They're listening to the wrong report, and they're not making the right decisions. And they turned away from God instead of to God. They had a chance, but they turned away from him. And that's happened with many different people I've prophesied over.
Yeah, well, going back to when nobody was watching, God was watching you, testing you in the little. He knew what he was going to use you for such a time as this, and that's what we have to realize in the Bible. Even the Apostle Paul, his road to Damascus. I was in Acts today reading the Apostle Paul's story. He didn't immediately see Christ and change and start preaching. He went into Arabia for 3 years to reconnect to God, to know the truth. So we have to go through those processes. You just don't go from here to limelight preaching the gospel without going through the fire in the wilderness period to be prepared so he can trust you. It's not easy. It's not push a button.
Fire.
There's a lot of fire. Trust me. It took me to die 3 times to figure it out. I still don't have it
almost and no matter what Satan means to bring you harm, God will always turn into something good. And that's when I told him, and back a long time ago when I was extremely suicidal, I said, if you want me to stay here, I will. You take my life and do something with it, and turn every test and everything that I'm going through, you turn it into a testimony. That's how you win the hearts of God's people, because you can relate to them when you're going through that fire and you're going through that darkness and you're going through that despair and you're going through it. Because a lot of people think that you don't go through anything because it looks like your life is always put together and your life is always fine. And people don't realize behind the scenes all of the attacks or all the struggle that people go through to have a calling on your life and to do what you're doing. But Satan never wins. And that's why we can be overcomers, because Jesus has already made us an overcomer. Somebody need to hear it. God has chosen them. And no matter what you're going through right now, and it looks like you may have had 100 setbacks, but God is going to pick the exact day and the exact hour. He's refining you. He's perfecting you into the person that he needs you to be. And you start seeing yourself through the eyes of Christ and not seeing yourself the way the enemy wants to see you. So that was for somebody out there watching.
That's right. And he uses those battles and those trials. And when you do get to that point publicly, they don't go away. They get more intense. Trust me. You know that. It's daily. There's fire going at us every day. And it's not going to end. It will not end until we go home.
The one good thing is what God says is he has disarmed the enemy and he's given us power and authority and dominion over it. And just how, last week I had something that happened to me.
Yep.
And one of the things, and the doctor, they checked for some serious stuff. They really thought something was majorly wrong. I didn't feel that in my heart something was majorly wrong, but they obviously did. And I prayed that every test would come back with a good result. It's like the team was praying that way. And so they come to find out it was a pinched nerve and a strain, and I pulled a muscle in my neck. Don't ask me how, I don't know. But I was under excruciating pain. But it didn't matter what had caused it, and if there was anything else that was wrong. When all the tests came back, they came back exactly the way we prayed about it. They came back clear. And so when you're in that point in time, if you're like an emergency room and you're going through pain and you're going through that affliction, Satan wants you to say certain things. He wants you to do certain things. He wants you to believe certain things. But we speak the words of God and speak only what he wants. Because when they started showing me some of these things that they were testing me for, and I was like, well, I didn't even think about that. Thank God I didn't think about that. But because fear would have tried to come in. Yep. But even if the enemy tries to come in like a flood, no, you draw him out. You bring him out by the power and the word of Almighty God, because God's word is truth and God's word is life. And God's word is a weapon against our enemy. So there are so many people right now, we're hearing these things from all these people. They're being discouraged. They're overwhelmed. They're giving up. They want to quit because it's so hard. And I want to tell them that, people like me and you, we go through these things. We're not just telling you these things because we've never gone through anything. We have gone through these things, and God has proven himself time and time again that if we trust and look to him, he's always faithful to bring us out of whatever we're in.
Yeah, I had a general this week ask me what the difference between when I was a director at AT&T and being running His Glory. I said, even though it was a woke company and was very cutthroat and it's very intense, AT&T, be a director at AT&T, I said, His Glory is a lot harder because the spiritual element, when you're at AT&T, there's no spiritual element. Satan just says he doesn't care. But when you're doing something for the Lord, Satan is coming after you. And if Satan's not coming after you, you're not a threat to him. So it's a lot harder doing a ministry when you're doing it for his name's sake, because you will, not if, you will get Satan's arrows coming at you.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we had to pray for President Trump, because not only, again, that he hears God and that his heart is opened to hearing from him, and his heart is willing to obey, because you got to think he's got the political also side that's trying to attack him, and you have this big force spiritually that's trying to attack him, because there is a war fighting for the death and the soul of this nation. The enemy wants the soul of this nation to die. He doesn't want this nation to move forward. Like he's trying to cause a rift between Israel and the United States. I've been hearing certain things from certain people. Stuff was going on. And one of the things I was explaining to somebody is they're trying to destroy Israel. They have a swamp. They have a deep state. They have people that are out there trying to bring a divide between Israel and the United States of America. The United States of America needs to align itself with Israel and not back off and not listen to all these things that people are trying to say and do. We have to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They have people bad in their government, just like we do, and we had to pray all of them out and all of their eviction notices out of government and away from God's purpose for both these countries coming together right now in this time.
Again, like we say many times, there's a difference between biblical Israel that we support, the Abrahamic Davidic covenant for eternity, and the secular government, which has bad Oreos and an evil element to it. It's not all one is good, all one is bad. It's two. It's just like the Bible. In Kings, in the Northern Kingdom, had bad kings that didn't listen to God. The prophetic words. We'll let you go with the prophetic words before what we talked about in the break. The Crossfire Hurricane. I'll just tee it up and you can go in the break and we'll talk about it more. But Crossfire Hurricane was huge. President Trump gave the order to release all that information, which is going to be huge. We're talking in the break that it's intensifying. You can feel the intensity and what he's done in the last couple of days with a signal and with Crossfire Hurricane. And then Alex Jones was reporting from a source, and I believe his source is the same source I know. I'm not for sure, but I'm about 90% confident. He is claiming that the Epstein files, up to 14 terabytes, have all been disseminated to FBI agents across the country, and they're in process of arrest and building the evidence for arrest. So hang on.
That whole house of cards is going to come down. But remember, we talked about this before, and that's why I think your phone was blowing up when we were talking about Epstein and how sex trafficking, and I was all connected to Wall Street and the big banks and, of course, the swamp and the establishment. That's the reason why they've been hiding and doing whatever they could to stop this, because this is a major deal. Epstein was not just Epstein hiding this island. This is a big deal. This will totally collapse the deep state as we know it.
And one thing Alex Jones did say is what I've been told too. I haven't seen the videos myself. Matter of fact, I've seen one video that a general gave me, but that was the Wiener laptop. But Alex Jones says that these are so graphic and horrific, what they've done to children, that just breaks your heart. You can't even watch them. These people are evil.
Yeah, they are. And I think besides, the sex trafficking stuff, which is bad enough, and I can't even imagine, but we're going to find out more what they do with adrenochrome, what they do with their blood, and what they do with sacrifices. And they're very occultic. They're very demonic. They're Luciferians. They worship the enemy. And so they don't care about life. They care about death. And that's why I think a lot of this is going to be shock and awe, and a lot of this is going to bring the world to a standstill almost when you find out how some of these people in your government could do the heinous acts that they did against the children, and what they've done with our tax dollars and many different foreign nations, against not only the foreign nations, but against us in this country as well. It's very devastating. We're going to find out how deep and how dirty and how dark all this has been. It's not going to be easy for people here, and I think that's the reason why we haven't heard it all at one time. I think that's the reason why this has been going on for as long as it has been, because people will not be able to handle the shock all at one time of what you're going to hear and what's going to come out.
And that's again what I heard yesterday, that for people expecting just this huge dump, it's not going to be a dump. It's going to be a drip, 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 because we can't handle it. And honestly, too, if it was too much, people would lose their attention, and it would be lost. The drip, drip, drip keeps it in people's attention. But you said Moloch and child sacrifice and adrenochrome. That's another thing that was significant that President Trump said yesterday. All federal dollars have been cut from Planned Parenthood, and he's also going to go after criminal charges for those who sold baby body parts at Planned Parenthood.
Okay, I missed a lot in the news. I did not hear that, but remember, God, he's given me a lot of different prophetic words regarding Planned Parenthood. One of the things he said, he was going to expose it and he was going to drain it, and that was one of their honey holes.
Yep.
And all the heinous things that they were doing, that they were being paid to do. And thinking about the fact that they would sell body parts and why they were selling them and what they were doing with them, again, it's going to be very hard for people to hear. This was sacrifice. These are blood sacrifices to the enemy. And they trick people into it. They deceive people into it. The enemy deceives people into it. They have sacrifices. They have done sacrifices on government property. They have made sacrifices to the enemy for certain things to take control over our country. Like you talked about the Pentagon before, when they had opened a portal to the enemy.
Yeah.
So this is so deep and so dark and so horrific and so bad. That's why God keeps talking about bracing for impact, and everything that can be shaken will be. And you're also going to be shocked of how much of the body of Christ and some of these big people that were connected to the establishment, not only with sex trafficking, but also they're being told what to say. Just like how, the news is being told what to say. Like, it's like that Mockingbird, I think is what it's called, where they all say the same exact thing. Well, some of the pastors and some of these big, huge people, and maybe some are well known, maybe some maybe not as much, but they're being told what to say and what to say to the congregations. I think that's the reason why a lot of congregations gave into COVID and gave into that lie, is because the people were being told what to say and what to feed their sheep in their congregations to believe this lie. So there are also people in the church that have been involved in this, and this is why I think it's going to hit the church harder. Is, you can figure that a lot of people think politicians are snakes. But when you think about a pastor or a person that is in front of a ministry, in a worldwide ministry or nationwide ministry, and they're doing what they were doing and they were connected to the deep state, it will shock many, many people, and it will be very hard for them to hear.
It's even worse than that. I think I mentioned this before. There's going to be a money trail to these pastors. They just didn't go up there blindly. Like you said, there was talking points, but they got paid. They got paid to do the jab. We were in one of those churches. I'm not going to name the church. I'll let the Lord expose the church at the right time, but I pray that they repent. But we were in one of those churches. The same church that we were doing baptisms in, that church on Reawaken, their chief security guy tried to stop us. There's like 5 other people in a huge line. I think we baptized like 400 or 500 people that day. And there's like 5 people that didn't. They traveled all over the country to get baptized. There's like 4 or 5 people that still had to go. And they're like, no, you can't. It's done. This ex-pastor said, you got to shut it down. I said, these people travel all over the country. They want to be baptized in the name of Christ. Isn't it what this church stands for? No. And they had weapons, and they're forcing us to do. And so I just did it anyway. I just did it. I said, nope, take me out. And we got it done. But can you believe that they would stop a baptism? Unbelievable.
No. That's when you know it's not of God, because God would never stop people from being baptized and people from being freed. That's just insane. But again, a lot of people do things for money. And they'll sell themselves to the devil for it. If their heart is not toward God, don't be wrong, it's not money that's evil. It's the love of money.
Right.
It's putting that money in front of God's assignment. God wants his people to have it so they can be blessed to be a blessed. They can bless people through it and with it. But it's the people that he can trust with it. The enemy, he buys people off. But again, God blesses people to be a blessing. So there's a big, huge, stark difference in that. But we're going to start seeing more of these things, and it's going to be really hard. I know I've had people persecute me in the world, different magazines, different, news articles, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really care about it. I laughed. I thought it was stupid and funny because they don't know anything. But then when you find out, then it's the church, it's ministries, it's your people that you thought were your friends. That is what hits like a knife.
Yeah.
That is what's hard when you fall, it's harder to get back up from that one. And so that's why we've been praying for the body of Christ, because once they find out their pastor, or once they find out their friend, or once they find out their worship leader, or once they find out these things, it's going to hit them like that knife. And they're not going to know how to handle that hurt. That's why we have to have that firm, focused foundation on God and not put anybody on a pedestal, because anybody can make a mistake and no one's perfect.
Exactly.
God doesn't pick out perfect. He picks out those he knows he can trust and he can use. So again, it's going to hit people. And that's the reason why they have to have that focus on God and not focus on man when all these things hit. So they're not taken by that knife, and the knife doesn't knock them over so they can't get back up again.
And that's hard for people to understand. It's not through, scripture doesn't say you have to go through Pastor X to get to Jesus to get to heaven. No, there's only one way. It's through the blood of the Lamb. That's it. So we don't put all that hope in pastors and all that stuff. I don't know what you're going to say in the Supreme Court prophetic word, but I will tee it up this way. I think I mentioned last week, I believe Boasberg is being exposed right before our very eyes. I believe Chief Justice Robert is being exposed. Yesterday, they launched, they're going to release Crossfire Hurricane, FISA Unmasked. We're going to see how Boasberg, Chief Justice, FISA Court, Russia hoax are all connected, and exposure's coming. What say you? What did the Lord tell you?
Oh, listen, so he has another prophecy on Justice Roberts. I'm not even kidding you. It's right here in front of my face. And I was just going to start telling you this. I'm going to talk about Justice Roberts. He's talked about him before. He's talked about removing him. But he's really, I didn't even know all this stuff was coming out. Okay, I don't watch the news. So I didn't know all these things were happening. I heard this one on Saturday, and it says, Justice Roberts, I will say your name again. You think because you have chief in front of your name and you are protected by the deep state that you can rule any way you want or the way your puppet masters tell you, and you will get away with it. Your days in the Supreme Court, protected by your dark past and your criminal acts against this nation, will be exposed, and I will remove you because I am a judge over all the earth. You will no longer be chief, and you will no longer sit as a justice in the Supreme Court, but in a jail cell where you will belong while you await your trial to be sentenced for treason. I will show the world your dark secrets and how you committed treason on numerous occasions and helped steal the 2020 election by your orders from above. to throw out or discredit any election fraud evidence, and you pass this message along to judges nationwide through your secret servers to throw out and damage or destroy the truth at all costs. I will show how you padded your pockets and how you are deeply connected to the sex trafficking world, and that is why you have your position today. But someone has everything they need to take you out completely. Video and audio evidence along with numerous emails. They are all coming out to take you out, Justice Roberts. Justice is coming for you and your sentence is being handed down once and for all. Along with every other justice on the Supreme Court that has been ruling the way the establishment tells them to. Those orders have been passed down and the architects who have given these orders will be removed. A great shaking is coming to the Supreme Court and not but many will be left standing after my judgment hits that place, and all who are in it that are against me, saith the Lord of hosts. So that's the part about Justice Roberts. And I thought when he was talking about this, and he talks about his treasonous acts, what he did with the 2020 election. But I also, I was shocked when he was actually telling me, I should record this sometimes when I hear these prophecies, because my facial expressions when I'm like, did you just seriously say that? But when he says, your days are in the Supreme Court protected by your dark past and your criminal acts against this nation will be exposed and I will remove you because I am the judge over all the earth. You will no longer be chief and you'll no longer sit in the justice as justice in the Supreme Court, but a jail cell where you belong, where you will wait your trial for sentence for treason. And where it said, you not only were given orders about the election, but you also passed those orders along to other judges to look the other way or to destroy or deny that evidence. I thought was very, very, very stern and very strong. He went even more detail than he ever has before when he's brought up Chief Justice Roberts.
Probably a good thing you didn't see my face on the screen. I couldn't believe what I heard. I mean, you've had some really powerful prophetic words, but this to me is like, wow. And that ties, I'll kind of try to wrap this up from a natural perspective of how this affects. This goes way back to 2017. First of all, Kim Clement had a prophecy that 2 Supreme Court justices would have to resign in disgrace. I think we know one of them. I think I know who the other one is. The other is Crossfire Hurricane being released yesterday with FISA Unmasked. It's one of the 17 scandals. FISA Unmasked, he's the head of the FISA court. Spygate, so they knew about that. Boasberg was part of the FISA court, spying on the President of the United States. But John Brennan, Hammer, Project Hammer, that's where he spied on John Roberts and blackmailed him and blackmailed other people in Congress to do what he wanted him to do. And remember, you said the 2020 election. General McInerney, Hammer and Scorecard were used to steal the 2020 election. Mm-hmm. It's all connected.
That is right. Now, remind me now, because there's so many things I don't watch on the news. Remind me, and not only me, but other people. They may know more than I do. What was Crossfire Hurricane?
Crossfire Hurricane was the FBI's attempt to Russia hoax to bring down President Trump through unlawful FISA, using these FISA judges to spy on them, knowing it was wrong, have the entire Brennan and Obama spying on a sitting president, literally spying on him.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. They are all. So he talked about the collapse of CIA. And now we're starting to see how a lot of them were connected to, and a lot of the efforts were to hide JFK. Now, I know people were waiting for this big, huge boom, but also I don't think everything with the JFK files have been released.
No.
I think there's more things that were either trying to be destroyed, or they're trying to delay them, or they're trying to hide them and not let them be released. Because you still have informants, you still have people that are bad in the FBI, you still have people that are bad in the CIA, and they're trying to keep the really big bombshells from coming out. But it did all lead, a lot of it led back to the CIA and the CIA covering things up. So again, with the FBI and the CIA, I have a feeling we haven't seen anything. I mean, nothing yet to everything they're connected to. Because one of the things that God was talking about in these prophecies is that they are the first line of defense for the establishment. So they do the establishment's a lot of their dirty work. They do a lot of their protecting. They do a lot of their assignments that are given to them to protect the establishment at all costs. It doesn't matter who they kill. It doesn't matter what they do. I have another process coming out about that. And people they thought were dead or not, people that they thought, they killed them and their skeletons are dead and buried and they aren't going to come back to haunt them. Skeletons are coming out of the closet. People that they thought were dead are not dead. It is going to shock the establishment to no end when all these things start coming out. These things have not come out yet. That prophecy will come out actually tomorrow. But there is major things coming that they truly believe. And one of the things he did mention big time, I have to remember what it said. He mentioned big time things that were hidden with Epstein, and he's going to show the proof of who was in that cell, what happened in that cell, who was trying to destroy what happened in that cell. He is going to explode what happened with Epstein that day.
Yep. Again, if that is true, what Alex Jones heard, and I believe it is true, that the FBI has it's like 14 terabytes of information, videos, everything spread out so that everybody's got it. So, the other is the server that the Lord told you that they would have it. Well, we've seen that server. Mm-hmm. So they have that information. So it's all coming back. And so again, now it makes sense why President Trump did what he did a couple weeks ago. Remember, he took away the classification of key people like John Brennan, that they don't have access to classified material anymore. They should have been going, what is he up to? It wasn't just pulling their classified status. It was pulling that so that they couldn't react to what's coming next. They're going to be prosecuted. Right. Yeah,
that's right. There's a lot of God said treason would be their end.
This is confirmation that there is more on JFK files that goes beyond the CIA. So
we're going to find out. And I'm telling you, I think a lot of the roads are going to lead back. Obviously, we know the establishment. A lot of the roads are going to lead back to Lyndon B. Johnson. The reason why Lyndon B. Johnson was the vice president at the time, and that how he was a part of that entire thing with the killing of JFK, to be leading in that. Again, JFK knew something was going on with the CIA, just like I think it was, and I'll go back to this if we need to, but just like that judge that was appointed by Biden, she was looking into stuff with the CIA, and all of a sudden she just died out of nowhere in her house. She was a very young woman, like 43 years old. That one judge that was appointed by Biden.
Yep.
I think she was looking into, if I was right of what somebody showed me, she was looking into something to do with the CIA, and all of a sudden she turns out dead. Yeah,
I was told too she was digging into something around Mossad as well. So there's a double whammy.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And now, the American people, all my life growing up, people always had the question, nobody believed that it happened the way it happened with JFK. Now we know our own government killed JFK. And then that part of the JFK files was Lyndon B. Johnson was using Russia to set Russia up to make it look like Russia's involvement. So another Russia hoax just to create World War III. Another bombshell that I think happened yesterday or the day before that nobody's really talking about. President Trump pardoned Devon Archer. Devon Archer is the business partner to Hunter Biden. So all that Burisma, I'm told he's singing like a canary. All of it's coming out.
Do you know that God just talked about Burisma? I think I gave this to you last week about how Burisma was going to be a huge major key, and somebody was going to sing like a canary against the Bidens. They were going to give them all the information they needed. So when I saw that, I forgot about that guy. I totally forgot about him when I saw that he was pardoned. I'm like, that is really interesting, because God just talked about Burisma again, and how Burisma, there was more involvement and there's more dark secrets with Burisma that has not been told yet. We knew that there's things going on with the Biden and the reason why Hunter was there when he was there, but what the reason is and how deep it goes, people have no idea yet. And so God said there was going to be a lot of whistleblowers that are going to start singing like canaries, that are going to start giving each other away to save themselves. And I believe this Devon Archer is one of them that President Trump is going to use against bringing down the Bidens.
Oh, there's no question he's going to use them. You don't just pardon somebody out of the blue unless there's got to be a reason. Why would he do that? The only way you would take a pardon so you can't be in trouble is if you go to the big guy. It's going to go back to the big guy. There was another whistleblower that came forward today or this week. I don't remember. It's public. I can't remember where I saw this. But he said unequivocally that when Joe Biden was the closer on these deals with Hunter Biden, or he said he had nothing to do with the business, they would bring him in to close that deal. And he says, if you do this deal with me, then you're friends with me. But if you do this deal with my son, you're a friend of my son and me for life. He would close every deal. So he was involved. A whistleblower came out and said that this week.
You know, a guy talks about the Biden crime family, and he said that, remember, I think it was last week when I gave this out to you, that the Bidens were going to be the downfall to the establishment, because there were so many things that the Bidens were taking a part of and taking part in, and some of the things that they were sloppy with it, and they were, because they were so arrogant and naive about some of the things that they were doing. They thought they were protected. They thought everything would be okay. But again, you just mentioned laptops earlier. Laptops are coming, and I'm telling you, there's going to be multiple different laptops, and they are going to come to destroy the Bidens, the entire Biden family. They're going to destroy a lot of different people in the deep state. They truly think that they are protected, but all these evidences and what's going on in the server, what's going on in these computers, is going to absolutely destroy a lot of the things that they're hiding and a lot of things that they're trying to do to stay in power.
Let's just, for people that forgot, you're going to hear this in the news a lot because of Crossfire Hurricane, but never forget, going back to 2016, Hillary Clinton, running for president, thought she was going to win. She came up with a Russia collusion. She made it up with Perkins Coie and the information she got from Five Eyes in Great Britain. FBI knew about it. They knew it. Comey knew it was a lie. Obama knew it was a lie. Brennan knew it was a lie. And they went with it anyway to try to steal the 2016 election and put America through 4 years of turmoil when President Trump did take office in 2016, because they stained him that he was involved in Russia. Mm-hmm. And then they kept spying on him using judges, FISA court, Supreme Court. This whole thing was rigged. If you don't think President Trump is in his position today by a miracle from God, he was stacked against all odds. It's amazing.
Yep. And he still is. There's, like I said, there's still people that are there that are setting him up right now. Like as we speak, there are people that are there trying to set him up for something, to be impeached for, or something to fall for, and even putting him in danger and somewhere where he goes, giving leaks of his security detail, things like that. There are people, again, that are in wolves in sheep's clothing, that are in moles, that are giving out information they should not be giving out regarding President Trump. But like I said, I think that he is allowing certain things to happen in order for him to catch who's really for him or who is really against him.
Yeah, and one other thing that unmasking, that has not come up a lot. That's part of the 17 scandals. Number 8, Spygate, FISA, unmask. We're going to see people like Samantha Powers, when she was the ambassador to the UN, had 300 times she unmasked people, including, I think General Flynn. She was one. And then where's Samantha Powers go after she's out of government? She went to run USAID, of all places, to keep that money flow going. You can't make this stuff up. Exactly.
And did I hear about USAID, that Obama was using that money for protests somewhere? Like, yes. I don't know. So what was exactly that about? Was he was paying people overseas to commit protests, or he was paying people here to protest?
Here, he was, I think both. But what he was doing is he's using USAID. He money laundered it. You should go to prison for this. Money laundered it through the Cayman Islands to use it for protesting. So he probably took money out of that too. But we do know he took money out of Obamacare through USAID as a royalty. He was getting paid $2.6 million a year since 2011 in Obamacare, which John Roberts was blackmailed to get Obamacare in. He made $40 million for Obamacare being through taxpayer dollars. That's one of the reasons Barack Obama got so rich.
Wow.
And nobody's talking about it.
I don't even know what to say. I know. When I saw that, when it was shown to me, I was like, well, why isn't it like headline news anywhere? The thing is, there are so many people still controlling the news media on what is allowed to be said and what's not allowed to be said, and to try to bury anything like that because they're still trying to protect Obama. It's not going to work. I mean, again, God said, follow the money, find the truth. And when you find the truth, that's literally going to bring them down, because lies are the ones that are keeping them in the positions that they are in now. So that's the reason why truth has to come out. And like you said, look at all these things about JFK. Look at all these things about Obama. Look at all these things about Crossfire Hurricane. Look at all these things that are coming out. And again, only certain things are allowed to be said. It's the same thing with Epstein. Certain things are only be allowed to be said. I really, truly believe some of these really bigger things are being waited on and being held back until President Trump truly knows who he is as God's David to throw those stones with the force that God needs them thrown with.
You know, as it takes some time for people to drip to get it through. You know, you and I probably hear more stuff than the average American, but that's where you got to get to. You got to get to the average American that doesn't know what's going on. And I think people are finally starting to realize a little bit at a time that what the truth is. We got to keep that dribble coming out. Another one is the State Department. This was last week, I think, end of last week, as the number 3 on the 17 scandals. I have State Department pedophilia ring. And that was announced that Hillary Clinton covered up as Secretary of State one of the biggest pedophilia rings in the State Department. I really wish I had this one out, and I don't have it out yet. But this prophecy was talking about this one talks about the scandals in your government. He talked about many secretaries of states. He also mentioned Hillary and all the things that they knew and the things that they were covering up. That's going to come out either tomorrow or Friday. But there was a lot of people. There's a lot of names. He's talking about secretaries of state. He was talking about other different. He says, watch secretaries of states, watch AGs be judged, watch FBI directors, CIA directors, watch many from the top down fall for every crime that they have committed. You are in the days of justice. But again, I'm only reading one tiny little paragraph of this entire prophecy. It's a really long one. But he did mention secretaries of state, and he also mentions Hillary Clinton or the Clintons inside this prophecy that was right underneath Justice Roberts. And then he goes to Chuck Schumer, and he talks about how Chuck Schumer is about to be a senator no more. He says the walls are closing in on him. Then he talks about the Clintons are about to be exposed in a major way, and their walls are closing in on them as well. The old guard is finished in this land of my eagles, so the great restoration can begin. Because he talks about how a great restoration for this country, and this country cannot be made whole. It cannot be freed. It cannot have that restoration until all is being destroyed, until all these people are brought down. It can't be a partial establishment, eradicating the government. It has to be all of them out of it. And so he's given me a lot of different scriptures to back that up. But I also want to read this too. One of the things that he says in this prophecy also, the jackals in Washington are all tearing each other apart limb by limb. Just wait to see who they let go, because they have to hand people over for bargaining chips to President Trump's army that is overtaking them. But no matter who they let go, they will all fall to my judgment. So they are going to use certain people as bargaining chips to give it to President Trump. They're thinking by giving these people over to President Trump and giving these people over to cause a distraction, or like Epstein. Epstein was going to take that fall for the whole sex trafficking island, and it's not going to work. They have bargaining chips, they have people, but it's not going to work because God said all of them are going to come down. All of them are going to be exposed. And I know one of the bargaining chips and one of the people they are going to let go is they're going to let the Biden go. Yeah. And Hunter and their family and so on and so on. But, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing them start letting Hillary Clinton go, because there's going to be too much found out about her, because God's talked about those 30,000 emails. He's talked about all the things they tried to cover up for her, and they're not going to be able to cover up for her much longer. And he talked about that quite some time ago, that he's mentioned those 30,000 emails that he said are going to come back and haunt Hillary Clinton, and also James Comey. For what he did. Remember when he was the FBI director in that time, and he helped cover up Hillary from what she was doing. That was in the same prophecy, how those two were connected with it. He is going to literally, it's all with the servers. It's all going to come out. I don't care how they think they destroyed some of these emails and some of these conversations. God says he has it all. And remember, I think we said this again last week, Barack Obama had a private email as well, communicating to her private server and her private email address. So 4 more of the 17 scandals are in play that involve Hillary Clinton as we speak. Benghazi was released last week. Pete Hegseth said, release all the information from Benghazi. We're going to find out what she did with Benghazi. We said State Department pedophilia ring. That was just announced last week. Clinton scandals, not the Clinton Foundation. All the other scandals, that is being worked on right now. I think there's 2 lawsuits. There's one in Minnesota and another one in Arkansas that's about ready to pop. And then the Clinton Foundation, which will be the mother of all of them, of huge scandal.
Guess what? He just talked about Benghazi again. Yeah, it was in this one. The same one. Like I said, I don't know if this one's going to be Thursday or Fridays. But he says, Benghazi, this cover-up is not over. Your enemies are trying everything they can, and they destroyed evidence of what happened that day and who gave the stand-down order. This was a prophecy talk about stand-down orders, and this is a big time. This is a lot of it's going to come out during a lot of different things that's happened in our military and a lot of things that happened overseas. He said not only will Hillary Clinton be exposed, but many will with her that took part in that fateful day and what they were truly hiding. I told you every skeleton in the politicians' closets were coming out. The truth will be told what happened that day, and everyone a part of it. And again, it goes on and on and on. I had to find it. And I will read it more next week when I'm on. But I had to find it because God was also mentioning Benghazi again. He's mentioned it many different times before in the last couple of years. He said he was not done with what happened that day and how deep and how far it really truly goes. And everybody who's responsible for it would be judged. But he said he kept mentioning in that prophecy over and over and over again all of the stand-down orders and how many people were affected and how many people were killed and why those stand-down orders came and who they came from.
I talked to somebody that's connected to the Marines. I don't remember the exact how many hours, but the Marines could have been there maybe within 5 hours if they were given the okay, maybe a little bit less than that, if I remember correctly. It could have saved the life of all the Americans, but they were told to stand down. Also, a bombshell coming out that we've talked about, I think once or twice in the last 4 or 5 years. I heard it again Monday, I think. Obama and Bush both collaborated to cover up of 9/11. They knew where Osama bin Laden was the whole time. They sent him to Iran. He was never in Afghanistan. So we sent our troops to Afghanistan to be killed for a lie. He was never in those mountains. He was in Iran. CBS News had this information. They were going to run it, and Obama squashed it.
That was either in the prophecy that I have coming up, or that was in a prophecy last week. I don't know, because I've heard so many. I hear at least five to six a week. But one of the things that he was talking about, how the media and all these journalists, I think it was one last week, how they were given also stand down orders to oppress information and not give out certain things. And they knew the truth. They knew the truth about Epstein. They knew the truth about other people, and they would not speak it out because people were so worried about their jobs. They chose to lie to the American public and to hide all these things. And all these journalists, and there's been a lot of them that have been removed, and there's been a lot of things that are going on with CNN and MSNBC that they're having money troubles, viewer troubles, which God said since 2001, he's called out those channels that they were going to start becoming bankrupt and they were going to shut their doors. But again, a lot of these people knew this information because they were actually journalists. They used to do some digging and they used to do certain things. Once they found it out, they were either threatened, their families were threatened, they were told not to say something, or they were bought and paid off, and the information never came out in the open.
Yeah, one of them was Amy. I don't remember her last name. I think it's Amy. She was at ABC News. She was caught on a video saying we had the Epstein story, but they told us to kill it. She was so frustrated because they had it before anybody else. Other thing,
Amy Robach, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Yep. The blonde hair woman.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think that was Amy Robach. Yeah, I think that's what her name is. Yeah.
And the other one, talking about the fake news coming down, that prophecy that the Lord told you, should be a part of what RFK Jr. just announced this week. He is going to eliminate pharmaceutical ads on TV. Gone. No more. Did you know that Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, 75% of their revenue comes from pharmaceutical companies? 75% of the revenue.
No way.
So they're not going to be able to keep the doors open. They're going to have to cut people left and right when that happens.
Oh, I did not know that, but remember he was saying he was going, I think I did the prophecies last week, and if I did not, I'll have to come back and bring them out, because he talked about the Rockefellers, he talked about the foundation of a Big Pharma, how Big Pharma started, why it started, what they're doing I have another one too about the container ships and biolabs and bioweapons and everything that's coming over, and ports, and how ports are being controlled and why they're being controlled by China, and how our government's using the ports against us. There's so many things that are going on right now. But Big Pharma, he's mentioned so many different times, but he's bringing it down because Big Pharma has been one of the biggest frauds ever, because they are not only had they been controlling, and that's one of the arms of the deep state, they've been given money to poison us. And then, of course, again, you got to think about it. Their revenue for all these, the big pharma has given all this money to the news media, and it just goes around and around and around and around and around. All of these honey holes and all of these things that they're doing to pad their own pockets, which God has warned about, he is going to empty them out. And that's why a lot of this stuff is going to explode. And that's why the financial markets have to come down, because big banks are also included with big pharma and with the deep state and with everything else. Everything is connected. And that's what, I mean, it's going to start really imploding when all this stuff starts happening.
So it gets even worse. It just jarred my memory. I was talking to the person who told me about the big pharma, and they said, "Did you know that that the pharmaceutical companies, when they run these ads, they don't get sales off these ads? Because when you look at them, you got always that, you lose weight, but in parentheses down below, your kidney will fall off or something like that." They said it was never designed to sell. It was designed to keep the talking heads in a box, that they would never come against them and do stories about how bad the pharmaceutical companies are. Never about driving product. That blew me away. And what you said about the new economy, I'll just say it again. I was confirmed like the 5th time this week. Gold, physical silver, crypto, XRP will be a part of this new system that's coming out.
Yep. God said back in, like, I don't know if it was 2001 or 2002. Or 22, 2021 or 2022, he talked about how he was bringing the gold standard back. And he was also going to reveal why the gold standard was taken away and when it was taken away. And obviously Nixon was set up too. The whole entire Watergate thing. We're going to start seeing so many things. And again, he talked about how they were the reason on purpose for the Great Depression. They're the ones who have been bringing purposely the recessions. They're the ones that are controlling the markets, controlling what is sold, controlling what is not. They have their hands in every single thing. So in order to suppress the country, in order to suppress people, and they're the ones who are making all the money on it. All of this is like a monopoly game to them. And that's the reason why all these things have to come down. You got to think about like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, those three companies, how those three companies control so many different things, how they're also squishing and destroying small businesses and stuff. There is so much going on that our government is a part of to keep our nation really physically sick, financially under a bind. We would never have any debt clock if we would have stayed in doing what we were doing with tariffs, what we were doing with the gold standard. We never would have been with a debt clock. And then God said the debt clock is a lie, and he was going to show everybody what that debt clock is all about and who that debt really belongs to, and it's not us. And so again, we're going to start watching the IRS be exposed. We're going to watch the Federal Reserve be exposed. We're going to see how all the deep state brought all these things in, including the Board of Education, and all these things that people truly think were good for this country were actually the destruction of this country, designed for the destruction of it.
Yeah, April 2nd, President Trump says a Liberation Day. It's more than tariffs. If he does what I was told he's going to do, there's going to be more of an announcement just in tariffs. It could be, you got to do research of what happened in the history of April 2nd. It goes back to, there's something to do with coins, silver and gold. I think he's implying silver and gold. Maybe he's going to make an announcement about silver and gold, crypto. I don't know. But I believe he's talking about something more than just tariffs on April 2nd. We shall see.
I hadn't heard that announcement. So I am curious because, again, when he says certain things, you got to really pay attention because he gives out little nuggets or Easter eggs for you to try. He doesn't tell you the whole entire thing, but he says he drops these hints in order for you to kind of dig in and see what's going on. So I have no idea what April 2nd is about. But again, when God said in his word in Haggai, he said the gold is mine and the silver is mine. He also talked about at the same time in Haggai chapter 2, he talked about he's shaking all the nations and all the desires of the nations shall come in. And then that's what he says about the gold and the silver. So that's why we're going to start seeing a lot of shakings worldwide, a lot of shakings in nations, a lot of shakings in the currency and the money, because the enemy has controlled it for so long and he's going to bring in a new system. So it's going to be very interesting on how God does all this, but it's going to be really fun to see how he takes out our enemy.
On March 31st, there's a call for the world to buy at least 1 ounce of silver because they believe if enough people buy just 1 ounce or more of silver, not only is it a good investment for you, but it will stop the short squeeze of the big banks and force them into can't control the currency anymore.
Không tốt, Lục Như Vân muốn động thủ, đón lấy, nắm lên trên bàn chế tốt vài tờ linh phù, liền chuẩn bị đi ra ngoài hướng truyền âm phù theo như lời phương hướng đuổi theo, nhưng lại bị Hoàng Tuyền lão tổ ngăn trở. Này, ta nói, người ta một cái nguyện đánh một cái nguyện lần lượt, ngươi lẫn vào cái gì tính, nên nói lời nói, chính hắn tìm đường chết, đã chết cùng ngươi lại có quan hệ gì đâu này. Diệp không lắc đầu nói, lời ấy sai rồi, Trác Cát rời đi trước, còn nhớ rõ cho ta lưu truyền âm phù, nói rõ hắn tại khả năng có thời khắc nguy hiểm, nghĩ đến chính là ta cái này người bằng hữu, đừng nói một người bạn, coi như là người qua đường, tại nguy hiểm lúc có thể nghĩ đến mời ta hỗ trợ, cái này là một loại tín nhiệm, ta làm sao có thể bỏ mặc. Hoàng Tuyền lão tổ bị nói không cách nào phản bác, còn nói thêm, thế nhưng mà vậy cũng phải tiến hành cùng lúc gian nha. Hiện tại ngươi sẽ trùng kích tầng thứ 4 rồi, ngươi cũng không là lần đầu tiên thăng cấp rồi, ngươi nên biết, tăng lên thời khắc tùy thời sẽ đến, nếu như cái kia thăng cấp thời khắc đã đến, không nhanh chóng tìm địa phương ngồi xuống, các loại, đợi tiếp theo, tự cần thật lâu, chắc có lẽ không trùng hợp như vậy à. Xảo sự tình rất nhiều đấy. Diệp không ngẩn người, bất quá vẫn là thu lại trận kỳ, đi ra môn. Lão tổ, ngươi biết ta người này là tuyệt đối sẽ không nhìn xem bằng hữu đi đến tuyệt lộ đấy. Ai? Hoàng Tuyền lão tổ lắc đầu, cười khổ, cũng không biết ngươi làm nhiều như vậy chuyện ngu xuẩn có thể hay không có hồi báo. Cùng lúc đó, tại nồng đậm Thập Vạn Đại Sơn bên trong một chỗ, chính phát sinh một hồi kịch chiến, đem làm Trác Cát cùng Lục Như Vân hai người tới bên này một sơn động trước thời điểm. Hắn kinh ngạc phát hiện, có người vậy mà đã đang chờ hắn, người này chính là của hắn sư huynh, cái kia râu quai nón đại hán, Hô Tán. Cửu nhân gặp mặt chia làm đỏ mắt, lại là tại hàng rào bên ngoài, tại Lục Như Vân khuyên can tựa như châm ngòi xuống, hai người rất nhanh làm. Hô Tán lấy được tin tức là Trác Cát cứng rắn đoạt người trong lòng của mình, chỉ cần may phục tại đây đã diệt Trác Cát. Lục Như Vân tự an tâm theo sát hắn, mà Trác Cát lấy được tin tức nhưng lại Hô Tán theo dõi mà đến với chính mình chuyện tốt, thì thật loại sự tình này hai người một đôi chất, tự chân tướng rõ ràng rồi. Có thể hai người này bởi vì nữ nhân oán hận chất chứa đã thật lâu rồi, gặp mặt ba câu nói không đến, tự đấu võ rồi. Cao hứng chính là nữ tu Lục Như Vân, nàng vì lòng của mình kế mà đắc ý. Hắc hắc, chờ bọn hắn đánh tới lưỡng bại câu thương, chính mình có thể lần lượt cưỡi đi lên, hút khô hai người công lực. Nếu như thành công luyện hóa về sau, tuyệt đối có thể tiến vào luyện khí hậu kỳ, nói không chừng có thể tiến vào 9 tầng đây này. Bỏ ra 1 tháng qua vào ngâm cái này 2 năm người, đổi lấy chính mình tăng lên 2 tầng, thậm chí tầng 3. Loại tu luyện này tốc độ thật sự là thoải mái lật ra. Đương nhiên, Lục Như Vân cũng từng nghĩ tới Diệp không, nghĩ đến hắn tàn nhẫn vô tình đã cảm thấy đáng sợ. Thế nhưng mà nàng lại nghĩ tới, dù sao bổn cô nương hấp hết bọn hắn sẽ thấy không quay về. Hạ Nguy, Cốt Linh môn đều cút đi, đợi bổn cô nương luyện đến kết đan, tự đi diệt các ngươi một môn. Trác Cát cùng Hô Tán nào biết được Lục Như Vân ác độc tâm tư, nào biết được khi bọn hắn trước khi hơn 10 tên nam tu đều đang nằm dưới khố hạ đã thành người. Hô, hai người là đã ra toàn lực chặn đánh giết đối phương. Trác Cát sử dụng chính là một loại chân gà tử tựa như pháp khí. Đối với Hô Tán tự là một trầu nắm bắt loại. Hô Tán biết rõ lợi hại, cho dù đỡ đòn linh khí cháo cũng không dám ngạnh kháng. Một bên phi hành né tránh, một bên tế ra một thanh thú cốt chế thành mã diên, hướng Trác Cát đâm tới. Hai người này một cái sư huynh một cái sư đệ, tu vị không kém nhiều, lại giúp nhau quen thuộc công kích của đối phương, lập tức tự chiến một cái tương xứng. Hô Tán, Như Vân là nữ nhân của ta, nếu như ngươi thức thời, tự cút nhanh lên khai mở, nếu không ta nhất định phải chạm ngươi không sai. Đánh rắm, Như Vân là lão tử nữ nhân, chỉ cần giết ngươi, lão tử cùng với nàng song tê song phi rồi. Như Vân ưa thích chính là ta, vật đua trời lựa, cường giả sinh tồn, nữ nhân đều là cường giả đấy, giống như loại người như ngươi kẻ yếu là không xứng có nữ nhân đấy. Người mẹ của nàng mới được là kẻ yếu, ai mạnh ai yếu, thuộc hạ gặp thực chương. Hai người đánh cho càng kịch liệt, Lục Như Vân càng là vui vẻ, bất quá sắc mặt lộ ra rất lo lắng bọn hắn. Độc bất động hô một câu, Trác Cát, đừng đánh nữa, ngươi đánh không lại hắn đấy. Muốn không phải là Hô Tán, nhanh trợ ủ. Trác Cát phát huy là rất lợi hại đấy, loại này can ngăn kết quả chính là đánh cho càng ngày càng lợi hại. Nam nhân đều có một hơi, nói ta đánh không lại hắn, ta không phải muốn tiêu diệt hắn. Đánh cho một hồi, hai người đều ra toàn lực, lập tức linh lực có chút theo không kịp, hai người linh lực vòng bảo hộ rõ ràng mờ đi, mà trốn tránh đối phương tốc độ di chuyển cũng bắt đầu giảm bớt. Trác Cát biết mình pháp lực so với đối phương hơi thấp một chút, mang xuống đối với chính mình bất lợi, thừa dịp Hô Tán không sẵn sàng, phóng ra bản thân đòn sát thủ. Oanh, một tiếng vang thật lớn, chỉ thấy lại là một con gà móng vuốt hung hăng nện vào Hô Tán linh lực vòng bảo hộ bên trên, thoáng một phát đem hắn vòng bảo hộ đánh tan. Sau đó chân gà tử tử đâm vào Hô Tán ngực, huyết quang nhảy hiện. Ha ha, Hô Tán, đồng môn vài thập niên, người cũng không biết ta là một đôi chân gà móc câu à. Ha ha, người chịu chết đi. Trác Cát liền chuẩn bị khống chế chân gà đưa Hô Tán vào chỗ chết. Nhưng này là Lục Như Vân lại nhào lên, khóc ròng nói, không muốn, ta không muốn các ngươi sư huynh đệ cho ta tương tàn. Các ngươi đừng đánh nữa. Thừa dịp Lục Như Vân cuốn lấy Trác Cát, Hô Tán cuồng tính đại phát, một bả theo miệng vết thương rút ra chân gà, móc ra linh tử quát lên điên cuồng mấy ngủ. Cái kia cốt xiên lập tức tăng vọt, đem khác một con gà chảo móc câu tia chớp đánh bay. Sau đó một xiên đâm về Trác Cát. Như Vân, tránh mau. Trác Cát tại cuối cùng trước mắt vẫn không quên đẩy ra Lục Như Vân. Hai cái ngu xuẩn nam nhân, hiện tại kết quả các ngươi thời cơ đã đến. Lục Như Vân trong nội tâm hừ lạnh một tiếng, đột nhiên móc ra một cái chuông đồng, ngón tay ngọc vừa nhấc, đánh ra một đám linh lực. Keng, một tiếng mang theo dư âm linh tiếng vang, chấn đắc trên trận hai cái bị thương không nhẹ nam tử đầu váng mắt hoa. Bị thương so sánh trọng Hô Tán, chân mềm nhũn trước ngã xuống. Keng, lại là một tiếng, Trác Cát cũng phốc thông thoáng một phát ngã quỵ. Ha ha, hai cái ngu xuẩn nam nhân, bổn cô nương làm sao có thể vừa ý các ngươi? Xem các ngươi dùng đồ bỏ đi thú cốt pháp khí, đều là hạ phẩm, bổn cô nương cái này nhiếp hồn linh, thế nhưng mà cha ta tự mình luyện thượng phẩm pháp khí. Các ngươi có sao? Lục Như Vân hừ lạnh một tiếng, đi qua nhìn xem lưỡng té xỉu nam nhân, thầm nói, họ Hô bị thương trọng, hay là trước hấp công lực của hắn. Sau đó, Lục Như Vân tự đút một viên thuốc tiến Trác Cát trong miệng, vỗ vỗ miệng của hắn, tự nhủ, ngủ một hồi a, đón lấy nàng sẽ đem Hô Tán đem đến trong sân động. Tại trong miệng hắn bỏ vào quả tỉnh thần hoàn, sau đó cười nói, Hô Tán, trước khi chết bổn cô nương cho ngươi khoái hoạt một bà. Đợi Hô Tán tỉnh lại trông thấy chính là mặt mũi tràn đầy rơi lệ nữ nhân. Hô Tán cảm thấy toàn thân vô lực, vội hỏi nói, Như Vân, rốt cuộc là làm sao vậy? Trác Cát đâu này, nơi này là chỗ nào? Lục Như Vân khóc lóc kể lể nói, Trác Cát tại phía sau đuổi giết chúng ta biết cái này mệnh mới đưa ngươi cứu được. Hiện tại chúng ta trốn ở một chỗ ẩn nấp trong sơn động. Hô Tán đại thụ cảm động, trong mắt ẩn ẩn có nước mắt chảy ra, giãy giụa thoáng một phát nói, ta như thế nào toàn thân vô lực, muốn dùng linh lực chữa trị thân thể đều không được, là vì thương thế của ngươi quá nặng. Ô, đều tại ta. Hô Tán vội la lên, vậy làm sao bây giờ? Ta trong túi trữ vật có dược, túi trữ vật bị Trác Cát đã đoạt. Hô Tán cái này thực nóng nảy, vậy làm sao bây giờ? Như Vân cứu ta với. Lục Như Vân nhịn cười, nhíu mày sầu khổ nói, trước mắt chỉ có một biện pháp, ta có một loại song tu công pháp, chỉ có như vậy tài năng cứu ngươi. Thế nhưng mà ta nếu như, Hô Tán trong nội tâm vậy mà ẩn ẩn vui sướng, mẹ đấy, thương thế kia không có phí công thủ, rốt cục có thể đạt được tiểu mỹ nhân hay vật rồi. Vội vàng nói, Như Vân, yên tâm, ta Hô Tán thề, hôm nay nhất định đối với Lục Như Vân một người tốt. Như có vi liệt thề ta thiên lôi đánh xuống chết không yên lành. Vậy thì, được rồi, Lục Như Vân giả bộ như rất hẹp cùng nói, ta đem khẩu quyết nói cho ngươi biết, đợi chút nữa, cái kia thời điểm, ngươi nhớ rõ niệm, nếu không thương thế của ngươi sẽ không tốt. Trong chớp mắt, Lục Như Vân đã cởi rơi váy dài, thần bí diệu dụng, bày ra không thể nghi ngờ. Thấy Hô Tán miệng lắm lưỡi hô, bất quá hắn không có đợi quá lâu, sau một khắc, quần của hắn cũng bị kéo rơi, đón lấy một loại làm cho nam nhân thoải mái tới cực điểm bao chặt cảm giác chuyện bên trên Hô Tán. Vỏ đại não, Hô Tán ta toàn bộ đều cho ngươi rồi. Lục Như Vân anh đinh nói ra, Như Vân, ta thích ngươi, cảm ơn ngươi, ta có thể vì ngươi làm hết thảy. Hô Tán đại thở gấp nói ra, u ám trong sơn động, đã nhìn thấy Lục Như Vân đại vấn cổ bạch đại tỏa sáng, cao thấp có tiết tấu động tác, nàng thanh thở gấp trong thanh âm, lại hừ ra một câu, cái kia còn không mau điểm niệm khẩu quyết. Hô Tán ca, Diệp Không vẫn không thay đổi phi hành pháp khí, thế cho nên đến thời gian có chút trễ, nên làm hắn đi vào cái kia hắc được tựu giống như quái thú niệm sơn động thời gian. Đã nhìn thấy Lục Như Vân tuyết trắng giống như đại kỳ cổ vẫn còn cao thấp đong đưa. Bất quá phía dưới người đã đổi thành Trác Cát, nhanh lên niệm khẩu quyết a. Trác Cát ca, thật sao? Ta đến niệm như thế nào đây? Diệp Không hừ lạnh một tiếng, vung tay lên, tiểu kiếm pháp khí giống như tấm lụa, thủy ngân tiết điện giống như quét tới. Đi chết đi, nữ nhân ác độc, tiểu kiếm pháp khí đón gió mà trường, một kiếm đem hào không phòng bị Lục Như Vân chém thành lưỡng đoạn, máu tươi như thác nước. Không muốn, Như Vân, ngươi vì cái gì giết nàng? Nằm Trác Cát trừng mắt gào thét, vì cái gì giết nàng? Nhìn xem cái này ngươi sẽ hiểu. Diệp Không tiện tay ném ra Hô Tán thi thể, giống như thây khô thi thể. Trác Cát cúi đầu xuống, thật lâu không nói, rất lâu mới thở dài nói, Như Vân, thì thật ta thật sự thích ngươi. Diệp không để ý tới hắn, nhìn miệng vết thương của hắn, phát hiện hắn khá tốt, không tính nghiêm trọng, lại để cho chính hắn phát ra một đạo truyền âm phù. Sau đó Diệp không tự lột xuống Lục Như Vân túi trữ vật. Bất quá Diệp không có lo lắng xem bên trong có cái gì, tự phát hiện mình trùng kích luyện khí tầng 4 cảm giác đã đến. Không tốt, luyện khí tầng 4, muốn thăng tầng rồi. Chương 113, biến ngu xuẩn, ta nói đi, ngươi nhìn ngươi làm sao bây giờ? Hoàng Tuyền lão tổ cười lạnh nói, không nghe lão nhân nói có hại chịu thiệt tại trước mắt, phải đi về khẳng định không kịp, nếu như bỏ qua hiện tại, Diệp không lại không cam lòng, đợi đến lúc lần sau, 1 tháng hay vẫn là 2 tháng, hắn đã đợi không kịp. Ở chỗ này, Diệp không quyết định thật nhanh, đưa tay lấy ra linh tu trấn thủ trận phù, lập tức đang cắt cát bên người bày trận, chuẩn bị ngay tại sơn động trùng kích luyện khí tầng 4. Ngươi coi chừng cái sơn động này ở bên trong, tình huống không rõ. Hoàng Tuyền lão tổ mở miệng nhắc nhở, chắc có lẽ không xảy ra trạng huống gì, Lục Như Vân có thể lựa chọn tại đây, đã nói lên nàng nhìn chúng tại đây không người quấy rầy. Diệp không bố tốt trận pháp, lại để cho Trác Tác yên tâm chờ đợi, mà chính hắn tác thì ngồi xếp bằng